We have our first real trade rumor of the year, and we're on just watches all over the place. De'Aaron Fox watch, and yes, Paolo Banchero watch today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is January 2nd, 2025. It will be January 3rd, 2025. My name is Phil Prosper-Mike. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, our first bona fide trade rumor as the Orlando Magic are officially connected to De'Aaron Fox. We'll talk a little bit about what the report says, why we should believe it, why we shouldn't, and what it all means for the Magic as we inch closer to trade deadline season. Plus, first returns of All-Star balloting are in, and the Magic did unexpectedly well. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. And you can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic Daily Newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Or start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic Newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It is January 2nd. We are roughly 4 weeks away from the February 6th NBA trade deadline. Make that 5 weeks away now that I can actually look at the calendar and count. 5 weeks to go. A lot's going to happen in those 5 weeks. Nothing is set in stone, and virtually no team is going to make a move until deadline day. So I've said this a million times with all the injuries the Magic have faced. Paolo's return was so close that it was just like, okay, we can hold the ship steady. We can keep this thing together with Franz out, and then Paolo will be back and everything will look fine. We'll get to when Paolo's coming back, potentially when Paolo's coming back here toward the end of the show. Franz Wagner not going to be back till around the trade deadline itself or until the All-Star break, even though Mo Wagner apparently said on his podcast, yes, everyone has a podcast. Mo's just happens to be in German. Mo Wagner at least reportedly said on his podcast that Franz's prognosis was not as bad as Paolo Banchero's. But again, we'll get to that toward the end of the show. The rumor mill is going to be spinning. And let's just, before we get into the specifics of what was said, because again, I'll go through my usual list of like warnings as we talk about trade rumors, as we begin to discuss these things. The Orlando Magic have undoubtedly entered a period or entered the phase of their rebuild where they are going to be players for big names. I get this question asked a lot. Why did the Magic sign Wendell Carter to his extension? Why did they take care of Jonathan Isaac the way that they did? Why did they sign Cole Anthony to the extension? If there are all these questions about these players, and my common answer has always been, you need the salaries. You need it for salary matching to get those players. If you're fine giving up Wendell Carter, which you obviously can't do until the offseason because of when he signed his extension, having that salary is really helpful to get the kind of players that the Magic are looking to get. On top of this, we all understand the Magic are aiming for a championship. It may not be this year, but it's going to be very, very soon. And Orlando is going to need upgrades to get there. They do not have it or does not feel like they have a championship team. Granted, we've been without our two best players. The Magic have been without their two best players for the last month. We don't know what this team really is yet. And getting Paolo back is going to help and all that. And again, I did an episode, what are the Magic looking for at the trade deadline? It was about 2 weeks ago now. You can go listen to that. It was back around December 15th. You could go listen to that. I'll rehash some of those points here in a minute. The Orlando Magic, though, are the exact kind of team that should be sniffing around for De'Aaron Fox. I tell this to everybody It's the NBA. You don't know who's going to become available, but something always happens, and it's usually something you don't expect. A month ago, there were hints that De'Aaron Fox might become available. He didn't sign an extension. He sort of said, like, let's see how we do this season before I commit to this team again. That was the first sign that there was trouble. And then the Kings just absolutely, they didn't implode. They're still like 500. They're still in the playoff race. They're not like out of it by any means. But obviously Sacramento has been unable to chase and reach the high that they did 2 years ago when they were the 3 seed in the West. They have fired Mike Brown ever since. There seems to be some dysfunction over what direction they are going in. And while they got a very nice win over the Philadelphia 76ers on Wednesday, the Kings' future feels very uncertain. And that gets us to this. There have been some offshore bookies that have had the Magic pegged as favorites to land De'Aaron Fox. And some of that is just professional dot connecting. Orlando needs a point guard. They're down some key players. They have the assets to move to go get a player of Fox's caliber. Why not? But now we have our first real connection. Sam Amick of The Athletic enlisting the potential trade market for De'Aaron Fox, who has not requested a trade by any means yet. Lists the Spurs, the Heat, the Lakers. We all see that. Then he goes here. Quote, the Orlando Magic, for example, are known to be contemplating a pursuit. And before he also lists the Houston Rockets as well as the San Antonio Spurs. There is a market for De'Aaron Fox. And a point guard of his caliber absolutely fits part of what the Magic need. When we look at this Magic roster, we see a lack of downhill attacking. We see a lack of pace. And De'Aaron Fox would undoubtedly add something to this team. I get why he is under consideration or why he is someone connected to the Magic in idle speculation. What Sam Amick is reporting, though, is the first time we've heard something that is not idle speculation. That is not like, oh, Fox would be a good fit there. There is some real juice to it. Now, usual caveats when we get to trade negotiations. I am one who, when someone reports something, if they're a legitimate reporter, I tend to believe they heard it from someone. I don't believe in discrediting the reporter unless they've just been proven to be wrong over and over and over and over again. Sam Amick is a very good reporter with The Athletic. If he says the Magic are known to be kicking the tires on this thing, and frankly, I'd be upset if the Magic were not at least considering it and kicking the tires and exploring and thinking about these things, because you should always be thinking about how your team can get better. And De'Aaron Fox is an all-star player. You'd be silly not to think about him. I'll get to why I'm not sold he's the right fit here in a minute. I'd be angry if the Magic weren't thinking about it. However, remember, Sam Amick is, I believe, based in Sacramento or based on the West Coast. He is not connected to the Magic. We all know that Magic don't leak anything. And while, certainly we were all at, a lot of the executives were at the G League Showcase last weekend, I haven't seen any rumors or reporting connecting the Magic otherwise. There is a lot more to be said, to say the least. There is a lot more left in there. But again, that reporting confirmed by Mark Stein on his Substack as well. The Magic are continually going to be cited in these discussions for De'Aaron Fox. So we have to think about it. Now, I will say this. I want to attack this rumor from two sides. First, let's think about the big picture side here. The Orlando Magic are a team that values continuity. And I don't see them disrupting continuity in the middle of the season. I think the Magic are in line to do a big deal. They are, like, if we're going to tier the Eastern Conference, Boston, Cleveland, New York are clearly that top tier. Orlando's sitting in tier 2 by themselves, at least in the standings. Like, Milwaukee is sneaking back up in there. I don't think Atlanta or Miami are going to make the finish line. They're kind of sprinting right now. They're winning right now. Orlando's struggling a little bit. Is a little closer in the standings than you'd like them to be. Milwaukee's right there. We're going to be fighting Milwaukee for the 4 and the 5 seed here. That's going to be the truth. But we also know that we don't know what this Magic team is yet. I know we're 35 games into the season, but we've played 30 games without Paolo Banchero and now 10 games without Franz Wagner. We don't know really what the Magic are. Now, we do know that their weaknesses are their lack of three-point shooting. We do know that their weaknesses are their lack of creation and playmaking, which Paolo and Franz are their top two guys. And so there is definitely something to saying, yes, go get a guy like De'Aaron Fox. And look, Fox's numbers are really, really solid. 26.8 points per game. That is a career high for him this year. He's averaging 6.2 assists per game. He's averaging 1.6 steals per game. So he fits that part of the Magic's identity. He's shooting a 54.3% effective field goal percentage, although he's shooting only 32.9% from three on 6 attempts per game. So a little bit of a volume shooter, which the Magic also need. He's shooting 49.2% overall. He is someone who can get downhill, be on the ball a lot, and set others up. But I'm not convinced that's really what the Magic are after at this stage. Because like I said, the Magic don't really know who they are. So unless they've come to the conclusion that part of the reason why Paolo and Franz both faced these injuries is because they had to do too much. Their usage rate was too high, and the Magic need to find a way to lighten that burden. And I think that is still the case, but not to the degree that it would be with De'Aaron Fox. Fox does not solve the three-point shooting problem. He is a decent shooter. He's a better shooter than his percentages, but he is not considered a shooter in this league. He is a high-usage on-ball point guard. And that's not what the Magic are going after. I get it. The name is big. And I'm all for the name. The Magic are going to have to find either a third all-star or a third borderline all-star. And again, it might still be Jalen Suggs. I don't think it is. Jalen has been miscast as the lead guy. He's better as a secondary player. The Magic are probably going to have to find a third guy or figure out what to do with their guard situation because they're not getting enough scoring and certainly not getting enough shooting from their guards. And again, Paolo and Franz's return is going to help a ton with that. Like, so much with that. To say that was what I was originally going to talk about today before all this stuff popped up. Getting Paolo and Franz back is going to help clarify roles, get open shots. It's, again, so much of the problem this year is we have not seen the Magic at full strength long enough to make any conclusions. We don't know how good this team really is. And so to that point, I don't see the Magic doing anything drastic before the playoffs. I think they want to see this team fully healthy in the playoffs and say, okay, we can see now and measure how we grew year over year and what we're missing. And again, obviously the Magic are missing outside shooting. I'm not going to deny that. The Magic are probably missing. We probably know what they're missing. But the question is, again, with how young this team is and where they're at in their development, how much do they want to shift and change Paolo and Franz's roles? How much do they want to take the ball out of the hands? Remember, when Franz gets back in February or March, when the Magic are prepping for the playoffs, Paolo is going to have to learn how to play with heliocentric Franz. And it's not to say that Paolo is going to get less shots or anything like that. But I've said this previously. They're not putting the genie back in the bottle with Franz. Franz Wagner is what Franz Wagner was since Paolo was hurt. That's not going away. You add in a De'Aaron Fox, you're taking those possessions away. You're taking some learning opportunities away from Paolo and Franz to figure out how to play off of each other. So I am not skeptical the Magic are exploring it because, again, there's a lot that makes sense about it. The Magic need a point guard. They need an organizer. They need another attacker, and De'Aaron Fox checks all those boxes. I am not surprised, nor would I be happy if the Magic weren't looking into this. But for the moment, I am not convinced this is the right idea. I'm not convinced the Magic are ready to go all in on at this level, and I'm not convinced this is the direction the Magic are going to go. Again, maybe that changes in the offseason, but I don't think this is a midseason move, and it sure feels like Fox is going to move midseason. But as I've said a million times, it's the NBA. Someone's going to become available. I don't think the Magic could miss their opportunity here. Or I don't think the Magic will miss their opportunity here. Thursday brought the first All-Star returns, and it had some surprising results. Talk a little bit about how the Magic might maybe get an All-Star coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Last week of the regular season, the NFL is this weekend with some humongous games on the schedule for our Florida teams. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers can clinch a playoff spot, and the NFC South against the New Orleans Saints. They are 13.5-point favorites over the Saints. The Miami Dolphins can also punch their ticket to the playoffs, I believe. I think I read that tiebreaker right. With a win at the New York Jets, they're only 1.5-point favorites on the road with Tua Tagovailoa not starting in that game. If basketball is Warrior Speed, because we are a basketball blog, our basketball site, the Orlando Magic are 1.5-point favorites over the Toronto Raptors in Friday's matchup at Scotiabank Arena. There's so many other great odds to look at and so many other great bets to make with FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I will admit, I have been lax. And we talked a little bit about our friends with the Kings. Be sure to check out Locked On Kings. They're going to have everything you need to know on this article by Sam Amick from The Athletic. Locked On Kings, one of my favorite Locked On podcasts. Matt George is a friend of the blog, friend of the site, friend of the pod. Does a great job. I'm sure we will talk with him again. He has pitched us all to submit our De'Aaron Fox trade ideas. I texted him and said, "You've probably been waiting for me to call you. Here's what we would talk about." And honestly, I said, "Hey, what's the Malik Monk situation like?" Because I think that's who the Magic are really after. But that's neither here nor there. This is more to reaffirm that the Tower Beam Alliance is still very, very strong. A little bit frayed, but still very, very strong as we try to help a small market team get their All-Stars. But I have been lax on All-Star voting. I'm just going to admit that. I've been lax on All-Star voting because first off, we kind of felt like we knew who the starters were going to be, at least who was going to be voted in. It's pretty well determined, although this year has a little bit of a surprise. But frankly, the Magic's 2 All-Stars just aren't going to play enough games to really be considered All-Stars. Even if their numbers are really good, Paolo Banchero has played 5 games. Unless you are Grant Hill levels of popular or Penny Hardaway levels of popular, both of them made the All-Star games despite being injured as starters, you're not making the All-Star team playing just 5 games. Franz Wagner would have been an All-Star, except he is hurt and is not going to be back before the All-Star break, or probably not going to be back for the All-Star break. And frankly, even if he plays the week before the All-Star break, I don't want him going to San Francisco. I want him off his feet. I want him getting rested. I want him getting ready for the rest of the season. Even if he made it, I would doubt he plays very much. He'd just go for the experience. Maybe he still gets selected by the coaches because he's played enough, but he really hasn't played enough either. The Magic are in a very rare position. I'm going to explain that in a minute, but we did get surprises when the first returns came in. Both Paolo and Franz are not only in the top 10 in All-Star voting to this point in the season, they're really outperforming all expectations and really outperforming some players that you would expect to do very well. First off, your Eastern Conference front court is pretty much set in stone. Giannis Antetokounmpo leads all voters, he's like Dwight Howard, leads all voters with 1.7 million votes. Jason Tatum is second with 1.4 million. Karl Anthony Towns has 1.1 million. Those are going to be your front court starters. And frankly, I can't argue with that. I was expecting Joel Embiid to still be named a starter because he's just popular. But I am not shocked that these are the 3. These are the right 3 to be named All-Star starters. But sitting in 4th place, despite playing only 5 games, Paolo Banchero with 484,096 votes. And that's without me, and I'm not going to take much credit, but that's without me really pumping out All-Star voting. I have not encouraged you to vote. I have not talked about voting. It has been on the back burner. But there Paolo Banchero is sitting in 4th. Franz Wagner, not too far behind him, but in that next tier of players, 7th in All-Star voting with 221,787 votes. More than Joel Embiid, might I add. I'll note this about Paolo Banchero. Paolo has more votes than Jalen Brunson and Trae Young. He had at 484,000 votes. He has more votes than Anthony Edwards. I went on my rant a little while ago about NBA TV ratings. The people are telling you they want new faces. The people are telling you who they're voting for that they're not even seeing. To me, like, I don't know if this is going to last, and now I'm going to encourage you all to vote, so let's run those numbers up. I don't know if this is going to last, but this is a really positive statement of how much Paolo imprinted himself in the early parts of the season, and that he is someone that the NBA might be able to market. Now, let's get to the rare stuff. The Magic are not going to have an all-star. They're not going to have. They're not going to get anyone voted in by the fans. It's not going to happen. Obviously, I just explained to you that those numbers. They are likely not going to have someone named by the coaches. The coaches vote for the reserves, and the East All-Stars feel pretty set. As far as I think the names that I looked at, again, your starters are going to be LaMelo Ball, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, Jason Tatum, and Karl Anthony Towns. I have Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brunson, Trae Young, Jaylen Brown, Tyler Hero, and Evan Mobley as my reserves. I believe that's all the reserves that I need. And then Damian Lillard as well as my last reserve. I feel pretty comfortable with that group. Dame was my last guy in, but you could. I'm here to listen to arguments against him. It's going to be hard for Franz Wagner, who's not going to be able to play, or Paolo Banchero, who's played only 5 games. He's out. He's already been listed as out for Friday's game against the Raptors. If he comes back Sunday against Utah, that's only 12 games before the coaches vote. Before the coaches' votes are due on January 30th. January 30th is when the reserves will be announced. He's only got 12 games. 17 games isn't going to be enough to be named an all-star. It's going to be a long shot. The only way that I see Paolo or Franz making the all-star team, frankly, is if they are injury replacements. If Adam Silver names him an injury replacement, again, who's going to miss the game because of an injury, we don't know yet. To me, that's going to be the struggle. Here's the bit of history. This is actually an interesting factoid that I looked up and tried to discover. The Orlando Magic are sitting in 4th in the East. Who knows if they'll be 4th in the East on February 14th? I think they still will be. Assuming that they're still 4th in the East on the weekend of during the All-Star break, they would become the first top 4 seed in either conference without an all-star since 2013. And Brook Lopez was named an injury replacement for the 4th place Brooklyn Nets. There has not been a top 4 team in either conference without an all-star since 2007, when the first place New Orleans Hornets, that was very early Chris Paul, did not have an all-star representative. We're talking about some very strange, and obviously it's been a strange season for the Magic. This is some very rare history for the league, because the coaches tend to go down the list of teams that are winning. They'll vote for guys that are doing well, that they know are doing well, but typically they will reward the coaches for the reserves, reward players who are on winning teams. It is hard to be an all-star on a bad team. Sorry, Jordan Poole, who's having a really nice run over the last few weeks. You're not making it. Sorry, maybe Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic, although that team is more competitive. Sorry, Cam Thomas. LaMelo Ball is going to get voted in. I don't know if LaMelo Ball makes it if he doesn't get voted in. He probably would. Just thinking about it. But if Franz were healthy, he'd take LaMelo Ball's spot. I would say that definitively. The Magic are going to struggle to get an all-star. Now, Orlando could still have a player in the all-star game, because I'm suspecting that Anthony Black and Tristan Da Silva will be playing in the Rising Stars game. And if their team wins the Rising Stars game, they're playing Sunday in the all-star game. So the Magic could still be represented on All-Star Weekend. They're definitely going to be represented at the Rising Stars game. Tristan Da Silva is one of the 10 best rookies in the league this year. He is going to San Francisco, barring injury, as always. But it's definitely going to be interesting. But again, it's great to see Paolo and Franz still accumulating votes. Let's run that score up. Let's get them some votes. Let's make it look good, even if they're not going to be able to get there. It's good to see that they're popular. Hopefully the NBA is noticing and thinking about putting the Magic on TV a little bit more because of that. Maybe we don't want that because the Magic don't win on TV. But again, the Magic aren't going to the All-Star game. Like it's probably not going to happen. Still could, but probably not. So when are we going to see Paolo Banchero? Let's do some injury updates because we are on Paolo watch officially. Well, not anymore. We're going to take the Paolo watch down for Friday. We are on Paolo watch this weekend. I'll talk a little bit about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And frankly, I love going to concerts when I can. I went to go see I'm a Disney pass holder. That you can't buy those tickets on Game Time, but I go to the concert series at Disney. I love going to Orlando City games when I can. I went to go see the Two Towers in concert at the Dr. Phillips Center. I saw Creed. It was a fun year for concerts. Now, whenever I'm looking for that next big show or next big game I want to go to, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I always like to keep an eye of what's coming to the Kia Center, what's coming into town, and just noting when things are going to be around and saying, okay, if I'm free that night, let me get tickets. And I'm usually a last-minute ticket buyer. That's where Game Time comes in. You pull up the app. They show you what's going on in your town. They tell you what seats are on fire and at a good price. And you just go to the game. And they are great last-minute deals too. Plus, their customer service is amazing. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So, we are officially on Paolo watch. If you don't know the difference between a watch and a warning, a watch is when you have the ingredients to make a taco. A warning is when you're eating tacos right now. We are not in Paolo warning territory yet. The Orlando Magic have already ruled Paolo Banchero out for Friday's game. That was expected. As he continues his return to conditioning procedures or return to competition conditioning. He told us a few weeks ago that really, he is entering the last phases of his conditioning. He told us last Friday before they played the Knicks, or Thursday, whenever that was, that he is really entering this last stage of his recovery. He told us he is completely healed, and that really it's now just about getting his conditioning back, taking contact, playing 5-on-5. We are at the last hurdles of Paolo Banchero's return. Jamal Mosley, before the team left on its trip on Tuesday on New Year's Eve, told us that he took some light contact in the Magic's practice on Tuesday. So again, we are inching closer and closer and closer, and it's not going to take very long after he gets through contact to be back on the floor. At the end of the day, this is what this all means. The Magic have said repeatedly, it's not about doing the phase. It's about doing the phase and then doing it again the next day. And that's the part we don't know because the team is on the road again. And their availability is much more limited. They were scheduled to practice Thursday, canceled, but we saw some Instagram photos of the guys at the Scotiabank Arena gym, probably getting some shots up, probably getting the bodies moving. May not have been an official practice, but assumedly Paolo Banchero is taking every moment he can to be on the court. Additionally, the FanDuel Sports Network Florida broadcast showed that Paolo Banchero did return to his pregame shooting slot. He was on the court at around 6:15, according to the broadcast. One of the last shooting slots, just getting shots up on the court. And typically, when a player returns to their shooting slot and returns to their kind of pregame rituals, that's one of the last phases before a player gets back on the court. It is very, very possible. I am not reporting. I am not confirming. I am not saying this with certainty, but it is very, very possible from my experience watching how players return from injury and all that Paolo Banchero could return as soon as Sunday against the Utah Jazz. It is very, very, I think it is probably more than likely that he will be back during the team's little mini homestand next week. The Magic play Sunday against Utah. They're on the road against New York. Powell's not playing back-to-back. So remember I said there's 12 games between now and when the coaches vote for the All-Star reserves. There's a few back-to-backs in there. Powell's probably not going to play in some of these early back-to-backs. Orlando's schedule is very cramped next week. They play, let me just make sure I have my days right. They play New York on Monday, Utah on Sunday. Then they play, I'm going to make sure I got this date right because I think I had it wrong earlier. They have a practice next Wednesday. They play the Timberwolves on Thursday and then the Bucks on Friday. And then they are on the road again on Sunday. And then they're Sunday at home against Philadelphia before they hit the road again, I believe. Yeah. And then they hit that Milwaukee-Boston road trip. So there's some time and there's some space in the schedule. I think it is very, I would be surprised. I would be shocked if Paolo doesn't play Thursday against Minnesota, or at least one of those two games, Thursday, Friday, against Minnesota and Milwaukee. The Milwaukee game feels a little bit more important right now than the Minnesota game, but Magic have to beat the Bucks, and that's their only home game against the Bucks this year. They'll play 3 times in Milwaukee because of the NBA Cup game. But this is a big moment, and we're obviously very, very close to Paolo's return. It is imminent. Again, like. I love the taco analogy for watches and warnings. A watch is you have the ingredients to make tacos. A warning means we're eating tacos right now. The ingredients to make tacos are there. The ingredients for Paolo Banchero's return are forming. And while he's not playing Friday, would not shock me if he's playing Sunday. Now, on to Franz Wagner. I mentioned earlier that Mo Wagner on his podcast, which is in German, Mo and Franz are great ambassadors of German basketball, and I'm not going to hate them for not doing things in English because I'm not going to be that guy. But I need to learn some. I need to sign up for Duolingo, make that a resolution, and learn some German. But Mo Wagner allegedly said on his podcast that Franz Wagner's prognosis or diagnosis for his torn oblique was not as severe as Paolo's, and indeed, we are starting to see Franz do a little bit. Jamal Mosley said again on Tuesday that Franz did some quote unquote light movement. We don't know what that is, but certainly we are at 4 weeks since his injury. That kind of reevaluation period is Saturday. 4 weeks is Saturday. So I would expect a more formal update, or we'll be freer to ask, like it's been 4 weeks. What's the deal? But we do have this update that he is doing some light movement. And if you watched the background of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's availability at shoot-around on Wednesday, Franz Wagner was in the back doing some resistance exercises. I would say this, Paolo was probably not doing those same resistance exercises, doing that same kind of movement stuff at 4 weeks that Franz is doing. So I think that lends some credence that Franz is progressing nicely, is progressing, again, slowly, but is progressing to a point where he can do more and begin rehabbing and getting back on the court. Again, unfortunately with your oblique, all you can do is sit and wait. You cannot really rush it. There's treatment you can do with it, as there is everything, but you just got to wait for it to heal before you start stressing it again. And that means you're not able to do a lot of running. The fact that Franz is already doing some like resistance work, I think is a very good sign. And again, I'm not anticipating that he's going to be back until early February at the soonest. I think the All-Star break. I think it's most likely we see him after the All-Star break. Like they give him until the All-Star break to saying like, hey, take that long week. We'll get a few practices in. We'll have a few practices before. We'll have a few practices after. You'll make your re-debut at Atlanta or at home against Memphis after the All-Star break. That to me is, I think, the target that we're looking at with Franz Wagner. But again, the Magic need some health. They need their guys back. We can see the deficit that they're playing with. We are almost at the end of the tunnel. Like we can see the light. It's not a train coming to hit us. It's the end of the tunnel. We're almost there. Paolo's almost back. And I think we have some pretty good news on Franz Wagner as well. But that's all we can do. All we can do is sit and wait with injuries. You can't really do much else. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Find me on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the Filming Style podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can find the latest on the Orlando Magic on OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. For even more on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub. I'll be doing my video breaking down the Magic's late game plays. I'm planning to do that on Friday, so I'll have that up Friday afternoon, hopefully, to help you prepare for the Magic's game against the Toronto Raptors. As if all that's not enough, and again, thank you for your support, as always. As if all that's not enough, you can check out the Locked On Magic daily newsletter, the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On our next episode, we'll break down the Magic's game against the Toronto Raptors. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Phil Rossman, right? See you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.